Welcome to Africa Geotrends, your window into Africa's power, progress, and geopolitics. Asterisk before we dive in, hit subscribe and turn on the bell so you never miss the stories shaping Africa's future. At dawn across the African continent, the first light touches a land and transformation. From Lagos to Lusaka, from Dakar to Djibouti, a new grid is forming, not in secret labs or Western boardrooms, but in the dust, the sun, and the wires stretched by local hands. They call it Mission 300, a plan backed by the Asia Infrastructure Investment Bank and the Islamic Development Bank, and its goal is unlike anything before, to connect 300 million Africans to electricity within the next decade. The number alone is staggering. 300 million, almost the population of the United States, living today without consistent power. But now, that's changing. With an initial investment of $6.15 billion and additional co-financing from African states, Mission 300 is the beginning of the continent's largest coordinated electrification effort in modern history. But this is not charity. It's strategy. The AIIB, founded in Beijing in 2015, and the AIIB, based in Jeddah, represent a shift in the global energy order, away from Western aid and towards South-South power investment. It's a partnership built not on colonial debt, but on mutual infrastructure. Across the continent, dozens of projects are already being identified. In Nigeria, engineers are upgrading off-grid solar mini-plants to feed micro-utilities that can power entire towns. In Ethiopia, new transmission lines now connect the Grand Renaissance Dam's hydropower to border villages once lit only by firelight. In Senegal, the World Bank's Scaling Solar program will merge with Mission 300 to extend clean power to 2.5 million homes. These numbers may sound distant, but they represent people. Like Mariam Adamu, a nurse in northern Nigeria, who once had to store vaccines in coolers packed with melting ice. Today, her clinic hums with solar refrigeration. Or Teshome Abebe, a farmer outside Bahir Dar, who installed a smart meter connected through a Mission 300 pilot, paying only for the power he uses. It feels like being seen, he says. We were in the dark for generations. Now I can plan. What makes Mission 300 so significant is the geopolitics behind the wires. For decades, Western energy agencies dictated the pace and model of Africa's electrification. Centralized grids, massive loans, delayed disbursements. But now, the initiative is driven by nations that themselves industrialized rapidly through infrastructure diplomacy. China, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Singapore, all using their development banks to invest not just in resources, but in connectivity. To the AIIB, Africa represents both opportunity and moral weight. No continent should be left behind in the energy transition, said Jean LeCun, the bank's president, when the partnership was announced in January 2025. To the AIIB, it's a continuation of its faith-based economic vision, community uplift through sustainability. Electricity is not a luxury, said Dr. Mohammed Al-Jasser, AIIB president. It is the light of dignity. Together, these institutions have mapped a $90 billion pathway, $6 billion already mobilized, $20 billion in the pipeline, and a goal to leverage private sector partnerships to reach that 300 million mark by 2035. That's not a distant horizon. It's a single decade. But Africa is not a passive recipient. Local innovators are building the technology that makes Mission 300 real. In Kenya, the firm PowerHive East Africa builds smart solar microgrids that sync with cloud-based load management. In Rwanda, startups like Mesh Power and Ampersand create hybrid energy systems that can power both homes and electric motorcycles, linking clean transport to clean generation. And in Ghana, the government's Energy Commission has signed memoranda with the AIIB to retrofit its aging substations with digital control systems made by local engineers. It's a continental renaissance of engineering, powered by data, not diesel. Music builds, percussion echoing like the heartbeat of progress. But there's another side to this story, one that the West is watching closely. As African grids go green and decentralized, they're also aligning technologically with Asia. Solar panels made in Shenzhen, lithium batteries from Malaysia, smart inverters from Dubai, all finding second life in African villages, cities, and factories. This could mark the end of Western dominance in global energy supply chains. A quiet energy diplomacy is unfolding, one where kilowatts mean influence. Countries that help Africa power up will also shape how Africa votes, trades, and innovates in the 2030s. From the corridors of Addis Abeba's AU headquarters to the summits of the BRICS Bank in Johannesburg, this reality is clear. Whoever builds Africa's grids builds the future. In the fishing town of Lamu, Kenya, new hybrid mini-grids already blend solar and wind. Locals call them Nguvu Mpya, the new strength. In Benin, off-grid entrepreneurs are designing smart billing apps that use blockchain to track energy credits across villages, leapfrogging old Western systems. And in South Africa, Eskom's transition plan integrates with Mission 300 to phase out coal plants by turning decommissioned sites into solar farms, retraining thousands of workers for renewable jobs. The social ripple is immense. Each electrified community gains digital access, from fintech to education to telehealth, creating a new generation of Africans whose first experience of modernity is renewable. That changes everything: mindset, economics, and climate impact. When you zoom out, you see something breathtaking: a continental power map, glowing in dots of gold, spreading like neural connections across Africa's 54 nations. Each dot a promise, each circuit a declaration that this is not a continent of scarcity, but one of creation. It's not just electricity, it's sovereignty. Music slows, narrator deepens tone. For over a century, the West extracted from Africa oil, copper, cobalt, uranium. Now, Africa is extracting something new: energy independence. And it's being financed not through the IMF's austerity loans, but through cooperative investment models that share risk and reward. AIIB and AIIB are setting a precedent that could redefine global development economics. When the Global South builds the Global South, there will be challenges: corruption, grid instability, policy lag. But the momentum is unmistakable. According to the World Bank, Africa's annual power capacity is now growing at 5.5%, faster than any region on Earth. Even the skeptics are taking notice. Energy analysts in London and Washington now admit that Africa could become the world's fastest-growing clean energy market by 2030. That's not a dream, it's data. Music swells to conclusion. In 2035, when a child switches on a light in a small village near the Sahel, they may not know who funded the grid, who anchored the panels, or who designed the circuit. But they'll know the difference between darkness and light. And that moment, multiplied by 300 million, is the definition of power. Not just electrical power, but the power to define your own future. Mission 300 is not just a project. It's a signal that Africa's energy story is no longer written elsewhere. It's being written here, under this sun, by the people who own it. You've been watching Africa Geo Trends, where Africa's moves shape the world. If you haven't already, subscribe now and stay ahead of the next big story.